This scene is a complete tragedy.
Chris is 3. Gwen and Faye were 6 months, and she called them her hot dog and her hamburger.
Inside this home, there is 2 adults and 3 children deceased.
I just screamed, "What the f*** in my car," over and over.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
November 16th, 2022. That's when you and I might have learned who the Hudgens family was, when their names became front and center on TV news screens and newspaper headlines in Arizona and around the nation. Their story began so much earlier, though, with important chapters that somehow all find their way to a tragic ending. The day before the end of their story was eerily normal.
Marla was one of my dearest friends. We met through my husband. He worked at the law firm. He worked at Lionel Sawyer with her. And for the last, 11 years, I've spoken to her hundreds of times in a day, nearly every day. She wasn't just my friend. She was part of my entire existence.
Kyne Anderson knew Marla Hudgens and her 3 little kids better than most. She was one of her best friends when the family lived in Las Vegas before they moved to Phoenix, a friendship that has never wavered. They were part of a group of girls that had a big group text, too. The friends all played fantasy football. And just like usual, Kyne and Marla were texting quite a bit on Tuesday, November 15th.
She had the best day on Tuesday. She had just found out that she'd gotten Taylor Swift pre-sale tickets. She was going to go to the Phoenix show and the Vegas show and was just thrilled. Was just having a great day. She got to hang out with her best friend Stacia, who had flown in from Lexington. She was having a fantastic day.
Their other good friend, Brett Haggerty, was also in contact with Marla.
Monday we were planning, we were all supposed to go on a cruise together in December, and Marla and I had the young kids, so we were going to do one of the excursion days together because everybody else was going off on things they could do with kids that could swim. And so Monday we were trying to pick a beach club. Tuesday we were freaking out about Taylor.
Taylor being Taylor Swift, of course. It was hard to get tickets to her concert. All 3 of them were stoked.
So the last I heard from her was about 8 p.m. Las Vegas time, so 9 p.m. Phoenix.
Kyne, Brett, and Marla went to bed, cities apart, but close as ever. They had some really fun family plans coming up. In an instant, everything changed overnight.
This scene is a complete tragedy behind us. What we can say is that this is a family inside this home. There is 2 adults and 3 children that are deceased inside this home with obvious signs of trauma.
What do you mean all of them? What do you mean all of them?
I had 5 missed calls from Kyne, and I just figured her pocket was calling me. So I texted her and I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "No, you need to call me right now." I just screamed, "What the f*** in my car," over and over.
In the early hours on Wednesday, November 16th, firefighters get a 911 call from a babysitter to respond to a home on Augusta Avenue in a quiet, upscale North Phoenix neighborhood for a strong smell of gas, assumably a hazmat situation.
What we can say is earlier this morning, Phoenix Fire and Police received a call just after 8 a.m. about a hazmat situation and an unresponsive person being inside. Both of our teams arrived. Fire worked very hard. It took a very long time for them to help make this resident safe. What we do know is that there was a presence of gas inside the home.
Authorities found a gas line had been intentionally detached from a kitchen appliance, and there were propane tanks on the property. But the grim discovery were the members of the Hudgens family found dead inside the home. Marla Hudgens, her 3-year-old son Christopher, and her 6-month-old twin girls Gwen and Faye, all found with trauma on their lifeless bodies. Husband Jasen Hudgens, found dead from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Police believe this is a murder-suicide at the hands of Jasen Hudgens. Their neighbors, Joni and Haley LeBlanc, frozen in disbelief.
This doesn't happen here. This doesn't happen.
This doesn't happen a lot of places, so I think
Right,
this is,
but just, this is so out of character.
I think right now it's kind of numbness right now.
Clearly something was not, something was wrong. And it's a shame. Could somebody have gotten help?
Yeah.
Was it a situation where somebody asked for help
And didn't
or
receive
didn't
the help
receive it
or
or
what?
didn't ask for help or what, who knows?
But to see the things that we saw yesterday is just, has
Just
been traumatizing.
It was just, wow. And to know that potentially he was, I don't know what he was going to do with the, tanks. I don't know that anybody's determined that. But it's still scary.
From a quick Google search, the only things you could find on the Hudgens family were nothing but great. Community involved, beautiful family of 5, committed to career, philanthropy, and charity. Everyone had the same question. What went so wrong here? So often in these true crime investigations, you have to go back years to find out where cracks may have formed along the way. Kyan Anderson and Brett Haggerty first told me about the Hudgens family and how they came to be.
She lived in Vegas with us for probably about 2-3 years. She moved not long after she had gotten married.
Jasen and Marla Hudgens would marry and head to another desert to dwell in, Phoenix, Arizona.
We tried to get her to move back to Las Vegas, but she just said that she loved her neighborhood. She loved her neighbors. She loved their traveling happy hours. She loved that she could just let Christopher go out the front door and not worry.
At her core, who was Marla Hudgens? Brett could answer that right away.
So Marla was a powerhouse of a person. She was a force to be reckoned with. She had professional confidence that I admired so much, and it was obvious in her work and what her colleagues thought of her and what the legal community thought of her. She would push you and she would encourage you and she believed in you.
Marla always felt she had a higher purpose, though, to become a mom.
And she wanted those babies so badly, and she did everything she could to bring them into existence.
Kyan and Brett watched Marla struggle through years of infertility and of heartbreak.
She lost babies, and she and I were pregnant with our children at the same time. And our babies were born 2 months apart, and we got to talk about all the things that infants do.
She would talk about infertility openly.
She felt that if she was willing to talk about it and make it more open, then it would help someone else understand what they're going through.
Her heart was always helping others, but became full when she was able to give birth to 3 kids.
Chris is 3, and Gwen and Faye were 6 months, and she called them her hot dog and her hamburger, because one of them was longer and skinny, and then one was short and round. So those were her nicknames for the girls, and Chris was just, her wild soul just caught on fire. They were wonderful children.
Marla had an innate motherly instinct before and after she had kids. She basically called another set of kids her family too.
She loved soccer, so she would find ways to help people get into soccer. She'd introduce adults into playing club soccer. She coached kids. She coached primarily with the Madison Football League that she had tried to quit so many times because she's so busy with other things. But those kids just kept pulling her back, and it's wild to think of how many kids she's affected and how she's grown their confidence in themselves. She was a firm believer that sports really helps you in your day-to-day life.
And the girls she coached felt that immensely.
It's where we learned how to play soccer, but more importantly, we learned about friendship and trust.
3 of them, Haley Farina, Savannah Nordvold, and Ruby DeSalis, went on to play on the varsity soccer team for Sunny Slope High School in Phoenix after spending years playing under Marla Hudgens as their coach. Haley actually following in her footsteps.
She was a big part of my life. I actually just this year started coaching 3rd and 4th graders for the MFC to kind of follow in her footsteps, and she was very, very proud to have seen us step up. And I'm very happy to have had her in my life, had her coaching me. I wouldn't be the player I was without her.
Savannah remembered when they learned as a team that Marla was pregnant with a son of her own.
She would always protect us. She was always by our sides.
These teenagers learned a lot of life lessons from Marla, but were never prepared to learn how she would reportedly be taken from them in a severe and horrific case of domestic violence.
Marla was like one of my second moms, I would say.
Ruby and Savannah tried to put into words how these girls were trying to process the loss.
I was angry and hurt because I was just remembering, how strong she was and how brave she was.
At the vigil, I was able to shed the first tears, but I couldn't process what was going on.
I'm really upset and I'm sad, and I really loved Marla.
It's not something you can get past, and we're going to carry that with us forever.
She played a big part, not just as a soccer coach, but also as part of our family.
Since they played with Marla for 3 years, I asked the girls if they ever met or talked to her husband Jasen at practices or games. They all said no, that he seemed pretty distant. I wanted to learn more about the Marla and Jasen dynamic. I asked Kine and Brett.
He was around, but he wasn't very social. We always joke about how a lot of couples have the shiny person. Sometimes couples take turns being shiny, but Marla was absolutely the shine in their relationship.
Marla had, such a big presence and personality, and she was interested in her own growth and development as a person and being better and breaking cycles for her children, and just very mindful, conscious individual. And I don't think Jasen kept up with that, and so naturally they started diverging.
There was something recent though, something they had to conquer together as a family, or should have. Marla suffered a major, devastating, and unexpected loss.
Her sister had just died by suicide just 2 months ago. We literally just had Lexa's celebration of life on Friday.
Friday, just days before the murder-suicide.
And she was really working through that grief and sharing it with people because she always wanted to help other people. Her sister's memorial was last Friday, and Jasen didn't go.
Jasen had a sibling who had passed away when he was younger as well, and Marla thinks that he just never really processed that. So when this happened with Lexa, it kind of triggered things.
For him to opt out of being there, I don't know if they would have been able to come back from that. We knew that marriage was likely ending.
Brett would later tell me Marla actually met with her divorce attorney on Tuesday, the day before she was killed. Even so, for as unfiltered and open as Marla was, Kine and Brett never saw any signs something like a horrific murder-suicide was even remotely possible.
We never had any indication from her that she felt scared, threatened, or unsafe.
No signs that this was going to happen.
One of Jasen's former co-workers reached out to our station, wanting to share his thoughts on the situation. He asked we conceal his name and changed his voice. He did know Jasen and Marla had some issues.
He would talk about the arguments that were going on, and Marla was a very educated woman, and I know that he was kind of a stubborn person, I would say. It's just unfortunate how he decided to do it, and there's no real right way to say it, but he did a really bad thing.
This man repeatedly said Jasen was a good man, which is hard to fathom knowing what authorities say he did to his wife and kids inside that home.
There's always a story behind everything, and domestic violence can lead to something tragic like this if it's not handled correctly.
The effects of grief from this crime have struck everyone in different ways and go beyond the Hudgens family and friends.
So we probably had close to 40 to 50 fire personnel on that scene.
Firefighters were the people who had to find the bodies in the terrible state they were in, walking into a mass casualty scene where babies are dead. Phoenix Fire Captain Todd Keller said they are trying to help the first responders who discovered the Hudgens family that day.
Once our firemen and women are done at the scene, they will go back to the fire station and they will meet with our chaplain, our department counselor, and get support from our members. In this incident, we did send multiple members home. A lot of times, these firemen and women just want to go home to their husbands and wives and go home to their kids.
Marla's parents have now lost 2 daughters within a couple months of each other in unimaginable pain. Kine remembered something Marla said at her sister's celebration of life.
We were talking about how it wasn't about the length of the life that you lead, but the depth and the breadth of it, and how surprised Marla was at how many people Lexa touched. And I don't think that she could have even comprehended the depth and the breadth of her own life. Because there's so many of us right now that don't know how we're going to go on without her. And then to think of her babies and how they won't even get to know how big of a person their mother was. And they won't get to experience it at all because they didn't get enough time either. It's too much. It's too much.
While we know Marla, Christopher, Gwen, and Faye were killed and had trauma on their bodies, we are still waiting for the medical examiner's autopsy reports to be released to learn more about their injuries and what they died from, though the medical examiner's website definitively lists all 3 children's cause of death as homicide. It's clear Marla has left a lasting impact on all of her friends, because while the struggle to process this grief is murky and unpredictable, there is one thing that's crystal clear to both Kine and Brett: what they do now.
Marla would want us to be loud about this. If this happened to one of us, Marla would start a nonprofit and a blog and a podcast and write opinion pieces about domestic violence and family murder, suicide. And I just think that the best thing we can do to honor Marla is be honest and truthful about what happened to her and tell as many people as we can as a cautionary tale, and also in an effort to make other people that this happened to help heal and feel better.
And she'd want us to talk about them and how these things happen and how there may not necessarily be signs. You always get the benefit of hindsight and retrospect upon things, but while we never thought that this was something that was going to happen, everyone knew they weren't happy. Anything that she ever felt was an injustice to anyone, whether it involved her or not. She was gonna fight for you, fight for whatever. And it's our turn to continue that fight for her in whatever way we can.
If you or anyone you know is experiencing domestic violence or needs help, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7 at 800-799-7233. True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.